certainly at the end. And of course, as always, if we don't get to your question because of timing or relevancy, we will be reaching back out after this webinar to directly follow up with you. And now lastly, this webinar is being recorded, so if you have to jump out or if you want to share it with a colleague, within 24 hours or so, we will be sending around an email notification with a link. So today's agenda, we'll run you through. So we'll do a quick introduction and company overview for those of you who are not familiar with Onset. Some of the data logging considerations that are out there, as well as the types of data loggers for monitoring. We'll also touch on configuration and launch, as well as deployment. And then some useful equipment or tools that you may want to have with you during deployment. And then certainly, towards the end, we'll talk about retrieving the data from the data logging equipment, as well as some analysis. And then some of you may be familiar with Onset resources we have here. If not, we'll certainly talk a little bit about that. And as I mentioned earlier, we will get into a little Q&A session. So really quickly to touch on the Onset company overview, we've been around since 1981. We have between 130, 140 employees. And since the early 80s, we've sold about 2.5 million data loggers worldwide. In addition to Onset selling data loggers directly, we do have a global network of distributors, which is listed on our website. And our sole focus is on data logging and monitoring. We really don't get into anything else. So this is our business. This is what we know. And for those of you who don't know, we are located in Bourne, Massachusetts, which is on sunny Cape Cod, about 3 miles or so over the Bourne Bridge. And we welcome all visitors. Just a little bit about the market focus. You know, I talked about data logging is, you know, what we do here, but the markets that we focus on is really the building performance and environmental research. Just to touch on building performance, for those of you who don't know, or this might be out of your area, that really means energy efficiency monitoring and indoor environmental monitoring. Today, really what we're talking about on the environmental research side is water monitoring and climate monitoring. So that's where we'll be spending our focus. And to get a little more specific in the types of measurements that we help customers with, you can kind of break it out a little bit here, you know, water, weather, and other. And I won't read through all the measurements, and many of these you may be familiar with. Some of them you may not as be familiar with, and now it's kind of a nice to know. But what I wanted to touch on is the other category. While we have listed out the specific measurements in the first 2 columns, sometimes we'll have applications with customers where we do not make the sensor here ourselves, but they do want to take some type of third-party measurement with a third-party sensor. Many of our data loggers have the ability to accept these third-party sensors based on the output of that sensor. And that could be in the form of 4 to 20 milliamps pulse signals, 0 to 24 volts DC. And we can certainly scale those measurements to mean something so you can interpret your data. So before we get going, I would like to introduce today's presenter. Eileen has been with Onset 18 plus years, and she really focuses on environmental research and water monitoring, so she has a ton of experience. And she really specializes in assisting consultants, government agencies, universities, really with environmental and water monitoring applications. So without further ado, I am going to hand it off to Eileen.
Thank you, and good morning and good afternoon to some of you. I am going to talk about what to consider and how to select and deploy water temperature data loggers. And as probably all of you know who are attending, researchers, research managers, People are using data loggers all over the world right now. Rivers, ephemeral ponds, streams, lakes, oceans, estuaries, and so that they have time and date stamped temperature readings over a period of time for months and even years, and you don't have to be there. You can set them up to record, go back and retrieve the data, and I'm going to help discuss some important methods so that you can find those data loggers when you go back and have your data. I'll give you some resources and tips on deploying in different environments.
All right, so after a quick introduction, we want to start with our first poll question of the day. We love polls, so let's see if we can launch this for you here. You want to take a minute or two and tell us what types of loggers you may have been using. So we'll let that run for a few seconds before we share the results. There's just another few more seconds there. The results are coming in. Not a big surprise so far from what we can see. All right, I am going to close up the polls here so we can share, and I'll let Eileen talk about the results a bit here.
So it looks like 74% are using our HOBO water temperature data loggers, and I'll go through a little bit of detail on that. 40% other HOBO loggers. I could guess what that might be, but definitely submit any questions and we'll be able to address those questions for you afterwards. 7% other vendors water temp loggers, 22% other data loggers, and 7% new users. Thanks very much for doing that. So here's primarily the items that are most important when you're starting out with data logging. The first thing I would ask you if I were talking to you or you called in is, what is the temperature range you expect to see? What's the high, what's the low, and how accurate do you need them to be? Because that provides some detail in which choices to make. Battery specifications is a consideration, and the temperature would also dictate that, like how robust do you need that data logger to be? Is it going to be frozen? Do you want to leave it for a year and come back and find that data? So we make sure that you're going to have a data logger that's rated to below freezing. It's still going to record, and you're going to be able to get that data off at the end. You want to match the environment you expect to see. And that, of course, addresses the climate of desired deployment. If you know you're going to be frozen, if you know it's going to be very hot, and how to anchor these so that you find them again. The length of your deployment, and how often do you want to record data. Typically, people might do water temperature data logging every 30 minutes, for example, but you can choose that. If you want to log as fast as every second or just hourly, the memory size on the data logger would dictate how long you need this to run. And do you need a fast response time? Different data loggers on the market, including ours, would have different parameters that would help narrow down your choices. And then again, how often will you visit the site? That your length of deployment is, are you carrying a laptop with you? Would a waterproof shuttle be an advantage if you're hiking up a mountain, but you do want to check on this after a month of deployment, make sure everything's okay? A shuttle would be an advantage where you would not have to take your computer to the site. And you want to make sure the batteries are going to last and be retrieved later. Our data loggers, if they finish out and stop recording, for example, if you've left them for 6 years and suddenly found one later, we have data loggers that will run for 6 years. The battery may die after that point, but you can still get the data off. And in those situations, we've had people call us. We can get data from a data logger that stopped recording by the EEPROM chip on the memory. And sometimes data loggers can get damaged depending on where they are. On that picture, one of my favorites where she's underwater, we've had data loggers sent into us that have chew marks and have been scraped, but we can still get data, which is a real advantage for the researcher. Here's a few kind of basic overviews of the data loggers we offer and some considerations. You want something easy and quick, and that is what HOBO water temperature loggers were all about. Certainly, we think we have the most cost-effective on the market. Ours are all reusable except that small tidbit. It looks like a soda bottle cap with a little orange label that has a 6-year battery, and it is coated in epoxy. People like that because it's small, easily camouflaged, easy to manage. When that battery dies, we can get the data off, but it can be a fancy keychain for you. It's the only data logger we have that does not have a replaceable battery or a factory replaceable battery. All of these loggers pictured, we have the pendant on the green label, the tidbit, and the WaterTemp Pro looks the black with the blue label. They all use an optical interface, so you have 2 choices in that. I'll talk a little bit more detail in a moment. And they're going to connect to your computer for you to set them up and have them record and then to retrieve them. I mentioned briefly the shuttle. It means that device is going to give you the option of not carrying a computer, and I'll touch a little bit more on that a few slides later on. That last bullet on the bottom, we have an optional boot, and it looks like a polypropylene material with an end cap. That fits over the WaterTemp Pro V2, the black data logger with that blue label in that picture. And it just helps protect if it is being sandblasted, helps to keep it clean. Many people don't use the boot. They might be putting it in PVC. It's just another option depending on where you're doing your deployment. And this slide is going to give us a little bit more detail on each. As you see, the important piece in that top row is what temperature range do you need to cover. The pendant, which is the first one listed, we have several models of that, 8K memory, 64K memory. Some have just temperature with an alarm indication, and they're used in different applications, perhaps even in a shipping application or just for something where you need a waterproof temperature logger to go in a package. We also have a pendant that has a light sensor, kind of designed for eelgrass studies that you can record temperature and light, and more memory so that you can leave it longer. The battery lasts for 1 year, user replaceable, and the case can be replaced as well. People like the pendants because they're our least expensive data logger. They can put a lot of them out in an area, lakes, ponds, to get a large profile. They're a tiny bit less accurate than the Tidbit or the WaterTemp Pro, and you'll see that in the next row, accuracy. And this is across a range of 0 to 50C. They will record outside that range for the most part, but that's where the accuracy spec is given. 0.54C for the pendants, 0.2C for the Tidbit, the WaterTemp Pro. The advantage on the WaterTemp Pro is it is rated to -40. Great advantage for leaving it year-round when you might be in very cold conditions. It has a 6-year battery, and that can also be sent in to have a factory replacement arranged. Tidbits, again, small size. These are a little bit of a claim to fame. They've been around for a long time, although we've updated them to be USB. They've been used for animal studies. Anywhere where something lightweight and small is an advantage. They're used on lobster traps and very accurate. This is the 6-year non-replaceable battery. The U12 stainless was designed for deeper deployments. You see we are giving a depth rating, and people might use that when they really need something robust or to higher temperatures when they still need a waterproof data logger. And the deep ocean, again, 11,000 meters. It is going to go to the deepest part of the ocean. It is made of titanium, as you can note by the price. It certainly is more robust and is still going to give you that wide range and factory replaceable batteries on those. These are the required items. I mentioned briefly a moment ago, you do need our software. Hoboware is available for a free download if you're using a base station. And what a base station is, in the second hand pictured there, holding that small black cable with the green pendant in it, it has a permanently attached USB cable, which means you need to have your laptop with you at the field site. We also have a shuttle, and the shuttle acts like a transfer device, like a flash drive in the field. It looks like the optic base station, except your USB cable comes separately. It is waterproof. It will let you connect to all of these data loggers that use the optic base station, which would have been the first three we talked about on the last slide. And you can download 63 data loggers. It doesn't matter how fast you've been recording, how much memory you've used. The shuttle has a bank of 63 loggers. It will pick up the serial number, any description you've put in the field, so that you can collect data one after the other at your field site, then go back to your office or your laptop and work with your data file. It will restart the loggers you have at the field site. It's a real advantage if you are hiking or traveling and want the convenience of not having to download to your laptop at the field site. I'm showing a picture of a housing. Looks like slotted PVC. It's something we came up with because people were asking for something already made where you didn't have to build your own. And any of the waterproof loggers will fit inside. It's also used for our water quality loggers, such as water level and dissolved oxygen or conductivity. The solar radiation shield was used for outdoor temperature, and often people would use that larger shield in an area where they know they're going to be in a snowfield and they need something waterproof, but you want to protect the logger from inaccurate readings in full sunlight. So you will still have a waterproof logger, but maybe you're using it in air or a piece that you think might be inundated at some point, so you'll still get accurate temperature reading. A little bit more detail on the waterproof shuttle. We often get a lot of questions on it, and you'll see in that picture you're sliding. That's a picture of one of our water level loggers with its coupler, and it slides onto the shuttle, and you have a series of blinking lights that you control. It's going to blink at you that it's found the logger, it's going to offload it, it's successful, you want to restart, and then go on to the next one. This can be used even underwater to 20 meters. So if you have to dive for this, as one of our earlier pictures of the diver in the coral reef, she can leave that. She doesn't have to remove it. She can download that logger underwater, watch the blinking light, let it restart so that clears the memory, and then go back to work with her data later. This uses 2 AA batteries, which the user can replace. Again, 63 data loggers at a time, which is, if you notice, it's one of the first things I said because it's important to a lot of people. And it takes the place of the base station. You don't need a base station and a shuttle. You can choose one or the other, depending on your situation. And it is $249. This is Hoboware, kind of your starter screen. You've chosen your data logger. You kind of know what you're going to do, and you're going to install the software on your computer. Select Launch from the device menu and go through your screen. Years ago, and as Ed mentioned, I've been here 18 years. When I first started, people were tracking the number of deployments because we didn't have a way at that time to trace the battery level. Now there's no guessing. Technology is wonderful. So you'll see the number of deployments, how good your battery is, gives you a chance to label your temperature sensor. Adding your interval, you can choose that. You can tell it to start logging immediately, and where that says 3:47 and 29 seconds, you don't want to see that in your data file. You want to see 12 noon on Friday so that your data has a nice, even look to it. You can set that for a wait till interval, a delayed start. There are several options. And then you'll hit start. This next screen is showing a little bit where you can go back to Hoboware, check the status, make sure you've set things up the way you wanted to set it up, and you can look at the blinking light on your device itself, this status screen in Hoboware. And we always recommend do a quick test before you go to your field site. Make sure everything's set up, do a short test, let it read out, and then you're satisfied that everything's ready to go. The software will tell you how much memory is left based on the logging interval that you choose, so you know when you want to go back to retrieve this. Most of the underwater loggers are going to stop when the memory is full, and you can plan on when to retrieve your device.
All right, looks like time for our second poll question. So we will open up those polls for everybody and give it a second, a few seconds I should say, and get a little understanding on where folks plan on deploying water temperature loggers. I mean, yes, we know you're probably going to deploy it in water. All right, just a few more seconds there as everyone's chiming in, so thank you for that. All right, so we are going to close the polls here so we can share the results with everybody.
Okay, typically it looks like we have some groundwater monitoring wells, which you certainly can do temperature alone in. Keep in mind we do have water level for groundwater wells, and they also record temperature as part of their readings. 87% in streams, rivers, and lakes. Well, you'll be happy to see some of the pictures coming up because they will be appropriate for what you're doing. Wetlands, absolutely, and estuaries, 14%, 13% bays and oceans. All of these data loggers that we've talked about are certainly appropriate for all of these locations. And to deployment, probably one of everyone's favorite discussions. Several steps: site selection, anchoring the logger, and documenting the location. These are very important. So site selection. You want a site with good mixing where the water is maybe turbulent below a rock. It's going to be more representative of what you're seeing in the stream, for example. You want to make sure the location is still going to be submerged at the low water point, and consider impact from any moving debris. Now, if it is exposed to ephemeral streams, which is one of the things that I mentioned, it isn't going to damage the data logger, but it is going to record higher temperatures if it is in full sunlight, where the case material would absorb that sunlight. So usually if it's underwater, you're going to get accurate readings. Anchoring the logger. Some of our users have tethered it to a cement block, a brick, using nylon cord. Others do choose to use rebar, where they're staking it into a stream bed or the shoreline, and they're going to cable tie or use hose clamps to the stake. For deep water deployments, people might attach the logger to a mooring line. They could use sand screws. Plastic cable ties are wonderful for almost everything. And you want to consider protecting and camouflaging the data logger as necessary. Burying the logger under rocks or gravel, in which case you probably want that protective housing or a boot, or some PVC, wire cage, and you want to document that location because you want to be able to find it again so no one else does. The good news on that is sometimes when someone else does, they've called us, and we can retrieve the data and usually track that to the end user to retrieve it. You want to also take a photograph, perhaps, of monitoring sites. You might want to enter GPS coordinates, and you might want to label the logger. And we're going to that useful equipment. Of course, a written deployment protocol. We have a white paper on the website that gives a lot more detail on some of the things that other users have shared with us, which is how they do this, and some of the things that they carry. And obviously, if you have an area that's hard to reach, you don't want to have to carry a cement block. You want to figure out an easier way to anchor these, whether they're cable ties, nylon cords, metal stakes, that kind of thing. You don't want to have to carry a lot of heavy tools to an area that's hard to reach. And flagging it, of course. One of our end users who uses the WaterTemp Pro V2 said what he liked was the mounting bail on the top of the logger, where it has a hole through it. You can place that on a chain or rope or line, and he likes net twine, and that's the kind that is used to repair netting, and doubled up the loop, ran it through the braid, and tied it on. He found that over time, especially on long deployments, it would be 3 or 4 years before he felt like he needed to swap out that cabling, that it looked in pretty good shape. Net twine doesn't break down. Cable ties do start to stretch, and they may start to elongate the hole if you're getting a lot of action from the water. So eventually you could get a little abrasion on the data logger. So the more efficiently you can anchor that logger, whether it's in a little bit of PVC, so you're not causing stress on it, that it's stable in the water, the better off, the longer life you're going to have out of the data loggers. And again, short-term deployments, cable ties are fine. Net twine is better for long deployments. And we've had people also suggest, because of the shape of the different loggers, sometimes they'll use a cable tie at the loop end, and they'll also put something around the middle of the body of the logger, or anchor it inside a PVC or rebar so it's not moving around. And I think we have a little bit more of useful equipment. We do ask any of you who are using our data loggers to email us, take pictures, ask us any questions. Sharing this, your experience on the website is so helpful for other people, and it certainly helps to educate us. And these are just part of the white paper that we've done from gathering information from our users over a lot of time, some things that might be helpful when you're going out for your first deployment. I think I've got what we consider some very interesting deployments and pictures. This is actually one of our conductivity loggers, which also does temperature in the Delaware River Basin. And they used, because they have a lot of river traffic, they couldn't have rebars sticking up or out. They needed to have something low so that it wouldn't interfere with a lot of boat traffic. And they've got this data logger mounted inside a metal or PVC housing, and it's attached to that heavy plate. It's camouflaged and it's labeled. And again, not interfering with heavily traveled rivers or recreational areas. That's a good way to keep your logger where you can find it again. We do have more detail on that. They have shared that application on our website. And they've got low-profile concrete bases, 2 short aluminum pipes, a lot more detail that we could share with you if you're interested in this kind of deployment. And the placing of the sensor within the PVC minimizes bubbles as well as sediment that might otherwise accumulate on the sensors. Another drawing on mounting with that cinder block. Cinder block is great if it's there, not so great if you have to carry it too far. So you want to consider, do I need a dozen of these in a lake or mountain stream? You might want to find a nice rock instead. I've also heard people use anchor bolts that are used like for trailers, and they may use that instead of the concrete block. I think the diagram is kind of self-explanatory. Again, we do have more written detail on that available on the website. This is kind of describing, because all of these loggers use this optical interface. So the drawing is pretty basic. You see the communications end, and this is kind of showing a WaterTemp Pro V2. Your optical end, is that communications end. That's what you need to access to be able to use the shuttle. So if you have it mounted in such a way where you don't want to remove that every time, especially if you're not going at the beginning of the season and the end of the season, if you want to read out that data in between, you want easy access to slide that shuttle on the end. So this is a suggestion for pounding some rebar in, using some zip ties, keeping the communications end easy for you to access, and being able to find it again. This is some great photos of mounting our tidbits on rocks in mountain streams. This is courtesy of a white paper from the USDA Forest Service, and we do have that available on the website, their complete procedure. What they do is they find a large, charismatic mega boulder. So they're going to find a rock that is going to be easy to find and hopefully not get washed away in a huge storm event. They use a solar radiation type shield that makes sense. They actually have a little shield over this that they've discussed. And in case it's out of the water at some point, they're recording the sensor serial number. They have it use a metal forestry tag to tag that. They clean off the rock. They perform their attachment methodology and using a specified procedure, which they are very happy to share. And as you can see, the first two photos are, this is just about right. Too much epoxy, they can't get to the shuttle. And another, the picture in the bottom end is, they really like this nice round flat rock that they could find again. A little bit of close-up pictures of deployments where they banded the WaterTemp Pro V2 on rebar underwater. They do have access to the communication end, which in this picture is down at the bottom. Photo on the right, he is able to put a post above along the stream bed and to easily access it. Not concerned about that rebar sticking up and finding it. In essence, use whatever makes sense in your area of deployment. So where you're going to be and how you need to get there, the goal for you is you want to find it again and you want to retrieve the data. So let's say you've gone back to your site and you're ready to bring this in. You are going to reconnect that data logger to Hoboware using your shuttle or your base station and select readout. And once the logger has completed its offload, you're going to select the parameters from the plot setup screen. You'll hit plot, which is shown in the bottom right-hand corner, and you will get a display of your data. And I think you can just sort of jump right through. So notice across the top, you have a text file, the number of deployments, the time, the date, your temperature reading, and if you were using any of the other water level, any of the water quality, you're going to have some other parameters that it's going to display for you along with your graph. Everything here is easily exported and shared. The software, we got a lot of happy users that it's pretty easy to use. Some of the standard features on Hoboware Pro, which is required if you're using the data shuttle. You need that Pro version of the software. It's available on the website to download for $75. We'll send it to you on a CD for $99, which includes an extra interface cable. But it has time-saving options. If you've got 20 or 100 of these in a system, Hoboware Pro lets you enter that parameter that you want once. So you want it to log every 15 minutes, you put that in once, connect each data logger, and it will save those parameters, so you have some time-saving features. Software is easy to use, and we do have technical support available if you need it, but it's a nice, easy, logical software that you can open, save, and export so that you can use it and share with your colleagues. A little bit more on, here's some of the things that it will do easily. Graphing, you can label it, add zooming so that you're displaying just a particular series. You can make pie charts easily. Copying, comparing this year to last year or even longer. In today's climate, I realize people have been doing this and they have years of data that they can combine 2016 to 1998 so that they can see what happens through saving all the data files. And we briefly made mention, we have made even more of an effort in the past several years to share data and educational resources. We have white papers, instructor online courses, the webinars that are available at your convenience, white papers, case studies. We do send a newsletter. If you don't want to receive a newsletter, you can opt out. We actually can manage to do that for you. And podcast interviews and tutorials. And if you're someone that would like to share what you're doing and set that up with other people in your field, we're certainly happy to help you support that. I think most people are often will ask, is there someone, do you know someone who's doing this? And if we can access that or source that or supply that resource on the website, I think it makes everybody a whole lot happier. You do have free tech support for the life of the product, and as Ed mentioned, I've been here 18 years, so we have some of our data loggers still in the field, and they'll call and say, I'm using this and the battery looks like a top hat. Well, we can help you with that. We are available Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't do something on a weekend. If you really need a phone call to us, do it Monday through Friday. And we're available by phone, email, and we do have an online chat where you can ask us questions if that's more convenient. Here's our contact information. I look much better than that. And if you have any questions, I think feel free to ask them. We'll be contacting you all after the webinar and sending the recording, and we'll open it up for any questions.
All right. Well, thank you, Eileen. Give us a moment here. We will access your questions, and feel free as we're talking to continue to type those in. And as I mentioned earlier, if we do not get to your question because of timing, or we may not be the appropriate resource to answer your question, we'll certainly get back in touch with you. So Eileen, the first one here looks like it's a question about factory replacement of a battery cost. I guess that really depends. I'll let you give that one.
Typically on a WaterTemp Pro V2, I think we're sending you a new data logger if you give us the serial number of the one you already have for $95. Tidbits, again, are the only ones that are not user replaceable. And depending on what you have, just give us a call and we can quote that for you. We do ask that you send in, we give you a return authorization number. So as soon as it comes in, we know what to do with it and make sure we get it back to you fairly quickly.
All right. Next question here. This is a good one. We might have touched on this briefly, but we'll certainly address it. Could you go over the difference of the base station and the shuttle?
That is a very typical question. I'm glad you asked that. The base station has a permanently attached USB cable that you cannot remove. So one end of the base station connects to the data logger. That would be the pendant or the water temp pro or the tidbit. The other end must be plugged into your computer. It is a USB cable. So if you're doing a lab setup and you're going to take it to your field site and then return to your lab, the base station would be appropriate because you are connecting to the computer to set it up and to read it out. The base station is less expensive. We've got a $70 base station for the pendants. We have a $124 base station for all of the other loggers, including the pendants that use that. So it gives you compatibility with 3 different kinds of underwater loggers. But again, you always need to be connected to the computer when you're using a base station to set it up and to read it out. And then obviously you're telling the data logger to start and you're putting it at the field site. It does not stay connected to that. The shuttle would perform the same functionality as the base station. It would take its place. You don't need both, but it also acts like a waterproof transfer. It's like a flash drive underwater. So you remove the top end, and that is where your USB port is. It's buried in 2 O-ring sealed waterproof containers. So your shuttle is a transfer device. It's your connection to the computer, and that's $249. That is when people are going to a field site, and it would be more convenient not to have your laptop at the field site. It also makes for faster downloading at the field site. It's just going to be a minute or 2 to each logger, and then when you go back to work with your data files, you'll spend a little bit more time saving it and perhaps setting it up to relaunch again.
All right. So here's a fun question and another common question. Why on earth is it called HOBO?
Would you like me to answer that? Yeah. Long ago, all of the names had that train theme. The loggers were HOBO, Stowaway. The software was Boxcar initially, because hobos traditionally, if you were thinking of a bum, for example, they went from city to city. They passed information. When we first, our owner first came out with HOBO, they were recording information and passing it along, and no one really knew it was there. It was, I believe, the first underwater data logger. So HOBO was the name for passing along information, and was catchy. So we are still known as HOBO, and it was that railroad theme that they stuck with. It is not an acronym.
It is not an acronym. All right, so another shuttle question. So you set your loggers to record on the hour. If you use the shuttle to offload data, does it reset the logger recording time so it no longer records on the hour?
No, it will wait until the next logging interval, so it will continue to record on the hour.
All right. Here is a deployment question here. Let's see. Let's see here. 1 second here. What is the best way to place a tidbit in a small trout stream? Any hints or suggestions?
I would use one of the housings or rebar so that you can anchor it. And again, you just want to make sure you find it again. And we do have caps for the tidbits. That's a good question. It helps keep them clean. So you just want, and it does have a bail. It would depend on some of the things that I just talked about. How long is it going to be there? Is it a fast-moving stream? We've had people who told me they camouflaged it and put them in soda cans, which is not a good idea, because someone might think this is garbage and clean it up thinking they're being a good Samaritan and you have no data. So you want to use something that makes sense if you're going to be in an area where there are people. You want to make sure you anchor it, and typically put it inside PVC or use one of our housings, cable tie it to a structure that is not going to move.
All right. Here is, Eileen talked about customers, end users sharing experiences, and the next one's not really even necessarily a question, but more of just here's what they do. So this person says that since the loggers stop when the memory is full, they deploy 2 loggers at a site. So it sounds like this person needs a lot of memory and they're probably having a long deployment. So what they do is in Hoboware, as Eileen showed you, you can delay the start of when you start logging. So this person, when they deploy the first logger, it will tell them how long they have or when that memory will fill up. So they start the second logger or schedule it to start to coincide with when the first one ends, and therefore extending their deployment. So that's a good tip. Thank you. That is a good one. All right. So another memory question. So as far as memory, it fills up and stops, not first in, first out.
I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, it's really how it works. Once it doesn't. If they're asking if it wraps over the old data, with these loggers, no.
Right. Most of these are going to fill up and stop. And actually, I would check every data logger that you were considering because we do have some that will overwrite. So I would definitely be happy to talk with you in detail, and I'll follow up with you and see which one we're interested in and what might be best.
Okay. So another deployment or application. So this application is in deep water wells. Do we have anything to say about usage of temperature sensors in deep water wells?
I suppose it depends on how deep, and do you want one of these standalone data loggers that we talked about that you have to pull up and retrieve? So it would depend a little bit more on the application, which one we would recommend. We do have some cable sensors. It depends, do you want water level as well or just temperature, and just being able to retrieve it again.
All right. So this is more of a maintenance question. How often should you confirm, check the calibration? How many temperature points? At what limits should the unit be repaired or replaced?
Typically, everything we make is under warranty for 1 year. But as I mentioned, the Tidbits, the WaterTemp Pro have 6-year battery life. We really don't expect that they need to be sent in. You can do some on-site calibration of your own using ice bath tests. We do have details on that we can share with you. Unless you think something's been damaged or it seems to be reading crazy readings, which is not usual. They typically don't need to be sent in. And again, it does depend on the application. If you want it sent in for a repair, we can offer that service. And the question was also how many temp points. It depends on what regulations you're being asked to meet, and it depends on your application.
All right. This is kind of going back to the shuttle. Do you have a recommended rugged device for downloading the data in the field? So I'm trying to understand this question. One, how rugged is the shuttle? And then I guess 2, really with the shuttle, hopefully or most likely you're taking it back to your office and connecting it to the computer. So if you want to touch on how rugged that shuttle is, I mean, I think we talked about how it's waterproof. You can do it underwater, so making it pretty rugged.
And it's limited to 20 meters, so it just depends on what you're faced with. I'm not aware of any issues with that shuttle running into an issue, and I would assume you would be not out in a hurricane, but you might be. So I will definitely follow up with the person that asked that question as well.
All right. So here's sometimes a typical type of thing we run into. This person has a U23 HOBO Pro V2 with an external probe that got chewed off by a rodent. And the battery died over time, and this individual could not download more than a couple days data, even though it has been deployed for months. Is the data recoverable?
It probably is. For that, I would love it if you would give us a call, 800-564-4377, and ask for tech support. We have someone here from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. They would be able to set that up and kind of do a little troubleshooting over the phone with you first, see if there's any way to get new batteries in that, because you can put batteries in that U23 data loggers yourself, and see if it needs to be sent in.
And to add on to that, our repair department has been able to do a lot of data recovery on loggers that have had similar circumstances. And we've even seen some extreme cases where some of our loggers have been shot or hit with buckshot, been through a wastewater treatment plant, and for whatever reason the battery died, but they still wanted to get the data off of it. So we've seen these things go through some pretty brutal situations, and we've been able to get the data off. So really the reason I wanted to share that question is to make the point that more than likely we can if it was recording the data. All right, so the next question I can answer, when will there be a seminar for the water depth monitors or the HOBO U20s? We had one last month, actually, so unfortunately it was you missed it. However, it has been recorded and it should be available on our website. So if you go to our homepage and under resources, you should see pre-recorded or webinars, and it should be there for you. If not, please reach out to us, and certainly, as always, if you have questions about the water level data loggers, reach out to us as well, and we can talk you through. All right, just going through some more questions here. Let's see. Do we have any data or customers using HOBOs for temperature tracking in stream beds with intermittent flow?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Sure, absolutely. And that would be the case where if it was exposed to dry beds, I typically don't recommend the Tidbit for that because you're going to have full sunlight. We would probably recommend the Water Temp Pro V2, more robust, and it won't damage it, but if it is in sunlight in a dry stream bed, it's going to be recording higher temperatures, but you'll know that from your data.
All right. There's a question about the couplers used to read up data loggers. Can the coupler to read a pendant be purchased separately? If I already have a waterproof shuttle, or do I have to purchase a pendant-specific reader?
You absolutely can get the coupler for the pendant separately. There is, I think they're $11, so you can get just the coupler that fits the pendant to go with your waterproof shuttle. Absolutely.
Yep, and just as a side note for everybody, when you purchase a shuttle or a base station, it includes all of the couplers for all of the HOBO optically read data loggers. So if you still have all the couplers that came with that initial purchase, you won't need to purchase a separate coupler. All right, we're still going through some questions here. Let's see here. All right, so is there a webinar on the use of the Hoboware Pro software that explains how to use all the features? So the answer to that is yes, there's a few resources out there. So Hoboware is a very large software platform, really used for the majority of standalone data loggers and some of our station-based data loggers. So there are webinars that we have done in the past, but as you can imagine, anytime software updates and changes, it's tough to keep up with that. So check out our resources page on our website for the webinars. Also, we do have a YouTube channel, and there's much shorter, digestible video clips on YouTube with Hoboware. So I recommend that. And the great thing about YouTube as well, there's many customers out there who have actually done their own YouTube videos. So it's a great forum for people to share resources. And we're about out of time, So if we didn't get to your question, we will certainly circle back with you, so don't feel that we missed you, and get you the answers. And for those of you who we've answered or addressed questions, if you have more, feel free to reach out, and we will certainly address those with you. So we want to thank everybody for taking the time with us today. We did take the full hour, but that's because we had a lot of great questions, and thank you very much.
Yes, thank you all, and give us a call if we don't get to you as quickly as you want, and thanks for attending.
Have a great day.